Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Marcinet, President and founder of MRM-EAM Consulting. I'm excited to introduce one of our MRM Essential Accelerators, purpose-built tools designed to simplify Maximo administration, boost productivity, and extend the value of your Maximo managed environment. Today's focus is our Rename Accelerator, a tool that enables Maximo administrators to rename Maximo records directly from within a custom Maximo application. Many organizations that run IBM Maximo eventually face a common challenge: the need to rename records. It might be because of a new naming standard, merger acquisition, data cleanup, or integration with other enterprise systems. Assets, locations, items, classifications, PMs, job plans, these were all created years ago, often no longer aligning with how the business manages equipment today. Renaming records in Maximo is not always straightforward. As most Maximo administrators know, record identifiers like asset number, location, item number are referenced across the system. Let's take a look at an example. Assets. Assets appear in work orders, PM records, meter readings, material transactions, purchasing transactions, asset hierarchies, failure, and on and on and on. That means renaming a single asset isn't just updating one record, it requires updating every reference to that asset across dozens of tables while maintaining referential integrity. If this process isn't handled correctly, organizations can encounter issues such as broken relationships between the records, incomplete maintenance history, integration failures with your external systems, and data inconsistencies that affect reporting and compliance. Traditionally, organizations address this challenge in a few different ways. They may create a new record and decommission the old record within Maximo. They may create custom SQL scripts that are executed directly to the database. Or they may use an extract, transform, load ETL tool and the integration framework, which is very time-consuming. These approaches often introduce several challenges. They limit the visibility into impacted records, introduce risk or missing dependencies, high effort for bulk updates, lack in audit execution and logging, and impose operational risk when changes are made directly to the database. As a result, many organizations simply avoid renaming records, even when they know the data needs correction. This is where MRM Rename Accelerator helps. The accelerator provides a controlled, automated way to rename records while preserving all relationships and history across the system. Instead of manually tracking dependencies, the accelerator manages this process for you. Let's go take a look and see how this accelerator works. But first, let's take the example of the asset and look at my favorite asset and your favorite asset, Pump 11430. I'm logged into my Maximo Managed 9.1 environment, and I have my operational dashboard, and we're going to go take a look at the asset application first. So go to Assets, and for those that have been around the Maximo space for a long time, all know about Pump 11430. And I think it's time that we take this pump and give it an actual proper name, right? Following a standard naming convention. Before we do that rename, I just want to point out a few different things on how referential data needs to be maintained. From the main asset application, we have obviously the asset number. We have a relationship to the parent, 11400. We have a relationship to a location. We've got a relationship to attachments. And if I look at this attachment actually resides on the asset application. So I need to make sure I maintain that relationship. As I navigate across the various tabs, I can see that there are sub-assemblies, so children. I have spare parts, 6. I may have safety information. I've got meters. I've got specifications. I've got work. And if I go into the view work details, remove the history flag, Got 127 work orders that I need to maintain relationships for, whether they're closed or in progress. I have PM records, I have routes, and I have inspections. These records all need to be maintained and linked to this asset. So let's go rename asset 11430. I'm going to filter on my application called Rename, and you'll notice that we have two applications that we would install in your environment. MRM Rename, which is where all the bulk of the work is done, and a configuration tool. In this demonstration, we're not going to go through the configuration tool, but essentially this is where you establish any unique or specific rules to your environment, allowing the rename tool to function correctly. I'm going to go to the MRM Rename application, and similar to any Maximo application, I'm presented with the list view that I can search, sort, filter, and I'm going to create a new job. We made this similar to a wizard. I need a job number, a description. I need to specify an object. And this is where that rename configuration comes into play. We are not giving you every single object that's in the Maximo database. We are eliminating internals, objects. We are eliminating views because typically you should be changing the main object. So these are all the appropriate tables that you would have the ability to rename a record identifier. I can filter and search. I know I'm on the asset, so I can click on asset here. And again, it allows you to rename the asset num field. I'm going to go ahead and click next. And while I click next, I'll point out a couple of things because it's building data right now. It determined that the object that I selected is a site level. And the information that we're going to be building is going to be specific now to a site level. Later on, we'll look at job plans, and job plans is an org site level. So therefore, additional fields need to be considered when renaming. This is very important because when we're doing the rename, we need to understand the type of object that we're renaming because it has an impact on the process of renaming. I have a section here or a table here where I'll define my old value, new value. We're going to come back to that in just a moment. But essentially what it was doing while we were navigating is go through the database and determine anywhere where asset and the asset object is being referenced on the same as attribute. It's also leveraging the rename configuration tool where you can hard code any specific tables that you may have added or added to another schema that you would want to include in that rename. So quickly here, I got 202 rows of data that needs to be potentially renamed or where the asset numbers. So everything from the audit tables to asset health, which are new tables that come with the health extension with the application suite, to many other tables, including PMs and work orders and so forth. So all of these tables are there. And now we come back to the value mapping. Similar to any other table, I can add a new row. I'm going to put in the old value, which is pump 11430, and I'm going to put in the new value. And in the new value, I want to use a standard that we're now implementing within our organization. And this is something that MRM-EAM can help with, right? We'll leverage industry best practices like ISO 14224 or ISO 55000 and the 55000 class of standards, or simply best practices and working with your organization. This exercise usually has to happen long before the rename tool is used, but very beneficial. So in the case of my scenario, I'm going to take that pump and I'm going to use a naming convention that's location, equipment type, subtype, and a number. So I know that that pump is in location BR430. I'm going to use a dash. The equipment type is a pump. And again, I could maybe spell it out or use an acronym. I'm going to use its subtype, which is a centrifugal pump. So CF to represent centrifugal. And then there may be one or more pumps in that location. So in this case, I'm going to use 001, maybe 002, 003, two-digit, three-digit. That all depends on your organization. And then tab out. Now, because this is a site level, one thing I'll point out is when I typed in the old value, it went out and it queried the database to figure out how many of these asset nums 11430 do I have in the system. In the demo data, there are multiple orgs, multiple sites, and the system can allow the same asset number to exist across multiple sites. So if 11430 existed in multiple sites, that count number would reflect the number of times it's found. And it hasn't found. If I want to be sure that I'm renaming pump 11430 in the Bedford site, I can go in and type in Bedford. Once I do that, I'm just going to save my job. So I've saved my job. And so actually I do have a few errors here and I need to correct those errors. So if I expand each row, it's going to tell me. So just zoom in so you can see the error message. So there has to be at least a value mapping that filters on site. And for this object, amcrew, WOTL.AcidNum references this acid num, right? The main object that we're trying to rename. And it's simply saying that, what do we want to populate the site ID? Because site ID does not exist on this table. And this might be a custom table. So maybe I used a non-standard site ID column. So maybe it's, my company acronym, MRM site ID or something like that. And if it is, I can manually populate that, or I can tell it to ignore this filter altogether. And if I expand the next one, I might say this one, go ahead and skip. And I'm actually, for the most part, we can skip these. I know the data, I know the tables. I'm not using these tables. This instance of Maximo has multiple industry solutions installed. So that pump 11430 would not exist in those tables. But I would need to do my due diligence prior to doing this to ensure that the data is correct. While I'm here, I'm just going to expand the asset alias. And why it took so long to build is it's actually creating the update statement for, once it finds all the tables and columns, it's creating the update statement. And then it's also creating the update count that is used from the logging so that we can track how many records were actually updated in the database. All right, so I've got everything there. I'm going to save this job. And I'm going to scroll up to the top and I'm going to hit the run rename and we'll just zoom back out here. We have put in steps to ensure that prior to making the rename or performing the rename change, that I have the right, I've taken a database backup, I'm sure, and then who is performing with a date and timestamp of when that change is being executed. Just get a little information message. It's telling me that the job has been running. I will be able to refresh and switch to the run logs tab. And just so you know, it is leveraging the async schedule job cron task. So that cron task by default, I believe, is running every 30 seconds. So it will pick up this job and execute this job. If this job does not run, then you would want to go check to make sure that that cron task is active. So a couple things will happen here. I'm going to get a new tab that shows up for the run logs. And then I have my status is changed to submit and the date and time that I've submitted that particular job. When I switch over to the run logs, in some cases, the log may not appear right away, or again, because that cron task has to kick in. I can see here that the job has already started. I'm tailing the last 30 lines. I can display the full log, click on refresh. So I'm at the top here. And then I can see for each table that it's renaming, and it's going simply in alphabetical order, how many records are being updated. So in the A_asset, which is the asset audit table, the audit table, it has renamed 15 rows in that table. And I can simply go through PMs. So there's an audit table around PMs, and it updated A rows. Yeah. We'll go down a little bit further. We can do a search in here. Work order. All right, so the job is completed. Let me go down to work order here. So in the work order asset num was 179 rows that it that it updated through that statement. So I can see what it's selected and then the number of rows that are there. So it's fully auditable. And then just quickly point out the status is now comp with the status date. So that job took a couple of minutes to run. So you can see how quick that was. And on the main page, again, also updated, and everything is read only. I cannot rerun this job and for obvious reasons, because that asset's not going to exist anymore. It marks everything read only and it is maintained for audit purposes. So let's jump over to the asset application. And I'm going to search for asset 11430. It is now gone from that list. And I'll search for BR430. Here I can see the new asset number that I created. I can still see the relationship to the parent, to the location. I can still see the one attachment that was associated to that record. Go to spare parts. I had one child or one subassembly. I had 6 spare parts. I had safety information. I had meters. All 4 meters are still there. All 11 specifications are still there with all of its values. And then if I go over to the work and view work details, we'll remove the history. So 127 work orders is what I had. I had 2 preventative maintenance records. I had a single route, and I believe I had 30 inspections. So they're all still there. So the rename tool, in just a matter of minutes, has updated a number of related tables for that same record, maintaining the integrity of that asset and that asset lifecycle history. All right, let's go in now and let's take a look at a bulk rename. I have this one queued up already, so I'm just gonna go ahead and we're gonna select this job right here. And in this job, we're going to rename a set of job plans. And in this case, instead of adding a record for each value that we want to remap, I'm using the SQL function. In the SQL function, I am renaming all job plans or looking for all job plans that start with JP-1. So when we originally created these job plans, we thought we would use a naming convention of JP dash followed by a number. And in doing so, we should not have used the dash at that time. It should have just been JP followed by the number. So I'm looking for all records that start with JP-1%, and I want to replace it by replacing the JP dash with just JP. Now, I just want to show something here, right? We know that in many cases, the key record identifier, in this case, a job plan number, in the database is, either numeric or alphanumeric and has a length, and that length needs to be maintained. So I believe in job plan, the length is either 8, 10, or 12. So I'm going to be a little bit exaggerating here. I'm just going to put JP ABC 1, 2, 3 on this just to show you some of the validation that we're doing in this rename tool. So if I click on validate, I will get a error message. the new value expression is incorrect. Some new values will exceed the attribute length limit. So we make sure that we're adhering to the database structure, the database setup of your data, and will not allow the data to extend or go beyond what is allowed in the database. So in this case, we're just going to eliminate the hyphen or the minus sign. I'm going to go ahead and click on validate, and it's querying the system, and it's going to build my mapping for me. It has defined an old value and the new value. And if that record had an org or site, it will populate that information as for me as well. You'll notice from the difference on this table from my asset table is it's introduced an organization column. And the reason for that is the object and the attribute that we're performing this change is actually a system org site level object. So because of that, we need to account for that. So very important. And again, sometimes this is information that may be missed when a DBA is writing SQL scripts to update this data in the back end, not understanding, again, the full aspect of the Maximo database. So I've got 3 records here. Again, there is no limit to the amount of records here. If you don't want to use SQL, you can use an MX loader sheet to populate this with an old value, new value. And again, depending on the object, it might have an org, it might have a site on that, and then it will go ahead and create it. Similar to before, I have some unresolved that I have to clean up. I've cleaned all those up, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit run rename, which will also do a save, and it'll do a validation. So all validations have passed. It's making sure that I've taken my backup. And just like before, gives me my informational message. I'll see my status has changed. I'll have my run logs tab. Nothing is in here right now, and this is going to run. While that's running, let's go look at some use cases. What are some ideal use cases for this tool? Standardization of naming conventions. Organizations typically implemented the Maximo system by either leveraging the previous data from the previous system that they had and just simply move it over as a way to accelerate the implementation, and are now looking to align with industry best practices or standards. Many organizations will look to reclassify their assets and location, use something that's a little bit more smart to identify what it is that a maintenance technician or operator are working on or looking at to find in the system. Many organizations will do mergers and acquisitions, or there's an organizational change, and because of this, they need to come up with new standards of that or align the standards, if it's an acquisition, align the standards with the incoming into the acquiring organization. Migration or system consolidation. So during Maximo upgrades, it's always a great opportunity to take a look at your system, and especially for organizations that may have implemented multi-site where multi-site is no longer working for them, to go to a single site. It's another great opportunity to do that, and or just to correct bad data, right? We know the data is bad. Let's take this opportunity in the upgrade to do what is functionally a technical change, right? And applying the rename. Correction of data errors, right? We know that people will fat finger data incorrectly, even if they're using tools like MX Loader, right? They may not enter the information correctly in the Excel spreadsheet, and it simply gets pushed up into Maximo, and now it's there, and it needs to be corrected. I mentioned integrations with third-party systems. As organizations are upgrading, implementing new systems, right? Aligning the data is very important, especially from a business intelligence perspective. And in the era of AI, moving to AI, this data becomes that much more important, these naming conventions. So another good reason why a rename tool would be important. And lastly, regulatory and compliance requirements. They're constantly changing, and or to better align your organization to those standards and leveraging these standards is another reason why you want to use or leverage our MRM Rename tool. So let's go back and take a look at the job plan bulk load change and see what's happened. I'm here back in the rename tool, and I'm going to go ahead and click refresh, and that job is completed. It's displaying the full log. And again, I can go through this log, which will be maintained and retained with the life of your Maximo system for any audit purposes. And I can see which tables are being updated in the system and how many records in those tables. Here's one for 90. So there's on the PM, there are 90 rows updated referencing those job plans that we've renamed. So if I go back to the job here, I'm going to take this query and we're going to go over to the job plan application. No records found. Go back into the where clause, just remove the hyphen, and there we go. So now I have those 3 records plus additional ones that are better aligned to my standard in my organization. The MRM Rename Accelerator helps organizations achieve several important outcomes: reduce operational risk, improve data governance, faster data cleanup, integration alignment with third-party systems, and preservation of maintenance history. The key takeaways is that the MRM Rename enables organizations to safely and efficiently rename records in Maximo while reducing effort, risk, and operational complexity. Without automation, renaming records can take significant effort because those identifiers are referenced across many parts of the system, and MRM Rename streamlines that process, reducing what could take days of analysis and coordination down to just minutes. Equally important, it reduces risk by ensuring that all related records are updated correctly while preserving maintenance history and maintaining system integrity. The accelerator also reduces reliance on specialized IT resources such as DBAs, allowing the Maximo administrator to perform renames with confidence without needing deep knowledge of the Maximo database structure. From a broader perspective, MRM Rename helps organizations standardize asset naming across the enterprise, accelerate Maximo data cleanup, and optimize initiatives and improve data quality to support analytics and emerging AI-driven asset management capabilities. And because this solution supports on-premise, hosted, and SaaS environments, it can easily fit into virtually any Maximo deployment model. The key takeaway is that MRM Rename transforms a complex, high-risk process into a fast, controlled, operational that saves time, reduces operational risk, and improves the overall quality and usability of Maximo data. I hope you found this session helpful, and we look forward to sharing more of our MRM Essential solutions with you soon. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.